Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tracing the pretty wild history of how science dared to study one of humanity's most private, most powerful forces, sex. We're going to see how the very idea of making a scientific report on something so personal was, in itself, a revolutionary act that threatened centuries of power.
For most of history, what was considered right or wrong about sex, it wasn't a matter of science, not at all. It was all about religious rules and what was considered tradition. It was really a battle of beliefs, not a search for actual facts.
And this one question, right here, it really sets the stage for this massive conflict between control and understanding, between dogma and actual data. Okay, let's get into it.
To really get why this was such a revolution, we first have to look at the world before all this happened. A world where our sex lives were governed by pretty much everything except scientific study.
So you had these two completely different worlds existing at the same time. On one hand, you had places like ancient India where sex was treated like a science, an art to be studied. But then in other parts of the world, it became something for strict legal and religious codes to control. It was this clash of norms with no objective scientific report to sort of act as a referee.
All right, let's jump to the moment everything changed. This is when a few really brave pioneers decided it was time to stop relying on dogma and start using data to replace opinion with actual observation.
So, in the early 20th century, this brand new field pops up, and the goal of sexology was, frankly, radical for its time, to study sex not as a sin, not as a duty, but as a fundamental, observable part of what it means to be human.
And right here, in 1919 Berlin, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld founded the world's first ever sex research center. And its motto? Wow, its motto just says it all. Through science to justice. See, it wasn't just about collecting facts. It was about using that objective, scientific knowledge to fight for tolerance and for human rights. And what's really amazing is just how much they were doing. This place was decades ahead of its time. They were offering services that were just unheard of anywhere else. They built a massive library, did groundbreaking research, and even worked with the police to create transvestite passes to protect people. It was a true scientific and social sanctuary.
But as you can probably guess, this open, rational, scientific approach to sexuality was seen as a direct threat. It stood in stark opposition to the rigid, anti-intellectual dogma of the rising Nazi Party.
And you can just see how things escalated. It started with physical violence against Hirschfeld himself. Then came the targeted propaganda in Nazi newspapers, and it all came to a head on May 6, 1933, when Nazi-aligned students and stormtroopers raided the institute with one goal: to destroy it. And just 4 days later, on May 10th, the institute's entire library, we're talking tens of thousands of unique books, research papers, and case files, was dragged out into the streets of Berlin and burned. The world's first physical report on the science of sex was literally turned to ash.
But here's the thing about ideas. You can burn books, but you can't really burn an idea. Even though the institute was destroyed, its core mission, that sex could and should be studied scientifically, had been planted.
So the torch was passed and it landed in the United States. And this is where two names would become famous for bringing the science of sex out of the lab and right into people's living rooms. First, Alfred Kinsey, and then Masters and Johnson.
And out of this new wave of research came a number, just one number, from Alfred Kinsey's 1948 report that sent absolute shockwaves through American society.
So what was it? This. The report showed that 39% of the unmarried men in his study had at least one homosexual experience that led to orgasm. This single statistic just flew in the face of the belief that these experiences were rare or some kind of an aberration. A scientific report was saying, not so much.
What the Kinsey reports did was basically hold up a giant mirror to society and reveal this massive gap between what people were being told was normal and what they were actually doing. For the first time, a scientific report was challenging social myths on a massive scale.
Okay, so this explosive new knowledge is out there. What happens next? Well, it didn't just change minds, it started to change behavior, and it completely reshaped society itself. Think about this incredible cascade of events. The pill gets approved in 1960, which, for the first time on a mass scale, separates sex from procreation. 5 years later, the Supreme Court says you have a right to use it. Then, the Stonewall riots in '69 spark a powerful new phase of the gay rights movement. It was like a domino effect of massive, rapid change.
And this revolution, it created the world we live in today. A world with so many more freedoms, for sure. But this quick shift from total secrecy to openness also brought on some unexpected consequences, especially when it came to public health.
So why does all this history about scientific reports on sex actually matter now? Well, this number right here gives us a pretty stark reason why.
That number, that's more than 1 million sexually transmitted infections that are acquired every single day around the world. It's a powerful reminder that while the sexual revolution brought incredible new freedoms, it also created really complex public health challenges that need more knowledge, not less.
Yeah, the legacy is complicated. We see it in the stigma that still exists around STIs, which stops people from getting tested. We see it in the unequal access to healthcare, where vulnerable groups often get left behind. The need for clear, factual, scientific information for a modern report on sex is just as critical today as it was back in Hirschfeld's time. So when you look back from the ashes of a library in Berlin all the way to the birth control pill, it's clear the scientific report on sex has been this incredibly powerful, disruptive force. It's been a story of struggle and profound change, and it really leaves you wondering, what's the next big question it's going to force us all to ask?